Hello, world. Good morning. Namaste. Nisam Bulavinaka from Sydney, Australia. I am Sashi Singh, and welcome once again to the highly anticipated weekly edition of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. In episode 35 this week, we will shortly meet our chief guest, Mr. Cecil Browne, former banker and now provisional candidate for the People's Alliance Party. We shall discuss with our chief guest what he says is definitely time for a change in the leadership in Fiji and why Fiji deserves better. We shall also discuss matters in relation to the Fiji Reserve Bank and the banking industry and the state of the economy in Fiji amidst the rising debt levels and why Cecil Browne put a halt to a career spanning 47 years in the banking industry to enter the cutthroat world of politics. All that and a whole lot more with our chief guest shortly. I hope wherever you are well settled in to enjoy what promises to be a captivating, engaging, and enlightening interview with my chief guest. Today, as we go right around the world by the wonders of Facebook Live and YouTube, I again request you to please share the SSTP page on your own timelines so that we may share the interview with Mr. Cecil Browne with as many interested people as possible. And if you share this live feed on your own timelines, all your friends and relatives will be able to watch this program as well. And to ensure that you receive instant notifications of future programs, notices, etc. on SSTP, please like the SSTP page and follow us if you can. Welcome once again to the Thinking People's program, Sashi Singh's Talking Point, live on Facebook and on YouTube. Today, before we begin our program proper, SSTP would like to pay a little tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Elizabeth II, the UK's longest-serving monarch, died at Balmoral aged 96 after reigning for 70 years. She died peacefully on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning Australian Eastern Standard Time at her Scottish estate where she had spent much of the summer. The Queen came to the throne in 1952 and witnessed enormous social change. Her son, King Charles III, said the death of his beloved mother was a moment of great sadness for him and his family, and that her loss would be deeply felt around the world. He said, "We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. I know her loss will be deeply felt throughout the country, the realms, and the Commonwealth, and by countless people around the world." During the coming period of mourning, he said, he and his family would be comforted and sustained by their knowledge of the respect and deep affection in which the Queen was so widely held. Queen Elizabeth II's tenure as head of state spanned post-war austerity, the transition from empire to Commonwealth, the end of the Cold War, and UK's entry into and withdrawal from the European Union. Her reign spanned 15 prime ministers, starting with Sir Winston Churchill, born in 1874, and including Liz Truss, born 101 years later in 1975. She held weekly audiences with her prime ministers throughout her reign. At Buckingham Palace in London, crowds awaiting updates on the Queen's condition began crying as they heard of her death. The Union flag on top of the palace was lowered to half-mast at 18:30 hours British Standard Time, and an official notice announcing the death was posted outside. New British Prime Minister Liz Truss, who was appointed by the Queen last Tuesday, said the monarch was the rock on which modern Britain was built, who had provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. Speaking about the new king, she said, "We offer him our loyalty and devotion, just as his mother devoted so much to so many for so long." And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King." The Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, spiritual leader to the Church of England, of which the monarch is the supreme governor, expressed his profound sadness. He said his prayers are with the king and the royal family. King Charles III paid tribute to his darling Mama, and the Queen, and vowed to renew her promise of a life of service as he delivered a deeply revealing and personal first address to the nation. The monarch, holding back tears, said, "To my darling Mama, thank you, thank you," as he hailed Elizabeth II as an inspiration and an example to me and to all my family. In a moving speech that was screened at a service of prayer and reflection at St. Paul's Cathedral, the king spoke of a time of change for my family while praising his darling wife Camilla, who becomes queen consort in recognition of her own loyal public service since their marriage 17 years ago. In his speech, the king said of his beloved mother, the late Elizabeth II, "We owe her the most heartful debt any family can owe to their mother for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example." He added, "To my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." The king pledged to dedicate his whole life to serving the nation, just as the Queen did at her session, saying, "That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today." The new reign of King Charles marks the first time in more than 200 years that a monarch with his name has sat on the throne after the 70-year-old second Elizabethan age finally ended with the death of the Queen on Friday. Prime Minister Liz Truss noted in her House of Commons tribute speech to the Queen how Charles will take the country forward to a new era of hope and progress, our new Carolean age. The term was previously used for the reigns of Charles II from 1660 to 1685 and his father, Charles I, who ruled from 1625 until 1649, when he was executed and the monarchy was temporarily abolished. The Queen is dead. Long live the King. That's our little tribute on SSTP to the royal family. And with that, we come back to our normal program, and that is now to welcome once again, to unpack the week from a political viewpoint. It's a big welcome once again to our regular contributor, Nikhil Singh. Nikhil, good morning to you. I hope you are well.
Certainly, and good morning, Sashi. Good morning to the viewers as well.
All right, well, Nikhil, before you begin, let me just ask you whether it's a sign of sheer arrogance or a lack of gross insensitivity and a breach of protocol, whichever way you'd like to put it, because the national flag of Fiji has been flying at full mast atop the Prime Minister's office, the Parliament building, and other places in Fiji, including police stations, when across the world, in other Commonwealth countries, at the White House, and other US government buildings, etc., and even here in Australia, the flags were flying at half mast as a tribute and a mark of respect to Her Majesty. Surely there is more to this than meets the eye, Nikhil.
Sashi, interesting you raised this because it is a very important protocol, one that would be unbelievable in my eyes to be missed. And I think in July this year, the new president of Fiji, was in the UK. He was received by the then Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, who's now King Charles. So, I mean, my observation is the height of hypocrisy. We've seen the messages of condolences from the Prime Minister, Frank Bainimarama, from the President himself. So something just isn't right, and you're absolutely correct, Sashi. There's going to be something missing, or there's something more to this story, with the flag being at full mast. So I mean, really, we have seen, if you look at in recent years, there was a concerted effort by the regime to in fact change the flag. So the flag has got the Union Jack, as you know, and I'm not sure whether this has got something to do with that, but clearly there's going to be someone in the Fijian government who can explain. It's either they have missed the protocol or they simply don't care.
Maybe it is just sheer arrogance, ignorance, or, as you say, um, some people have this feeling that that flag should go. Well, let's hope that common sense does prevail, and even it's while the world is in mourning, it's still not too late to bring that flag in Fiji down to half mast. All right, Nikhil, let's move on with your segment of the program. The contempt of court proceedings against Suva lawyer Richard Naidu was back in court last week. Mr. Naidu's defense team has entered a plea of not guilty. Please tell us more.
Yes, so a plea of not guilty was entered rather, Sashi. Richard Naidu took his plea through his lawyer John Apted, who said they were taking the plea under protest and they had some reservations. Now, following the plea, Apted informed the court that they would seek leave to appeal the two decisions denied by the Civil High Court last week. These include the decision to set aside the ex parte order in relation to the committal proceedings brought by the Attorney General, and the call to him to be cross-examined. The Fiji Law Society, who wants to intervene in these proceedings as a third party, also filed written submission seeking leave of the court to grant the application to allow the Queen's Counsel, which I think will now change, to appear via video link, Sashi.
All right, now, Nikhil, it's a matter of public record that the Attorney General is quick to point the finger at others when something goes wrong. The Asian Development Bank, ADB, is now being blamed for potholes on the roads in Fiji. Opposition leaders have sent a message to the Attorney General. What have they said?
Well, according to a report in the Fiji Times, Sashi, the Attorney General had said that some Asian Development Bank funded roads developed potholes within 3 months because, I quote, ADB told us to give it to the cheapest company. Talking about blaming everyone else but themselves, the Fiji Labour Party leader Mahendra Chaudhry said the Attorney General should stop blaming others for the failures of his own government. He said, and I quote, the ADB or any other international financial institution for that matter would not be expected to act in a manner detrimental to the interests of its member states. These are provisions in loan agreements to protect the borrower against construction defects, and these can be invoked should the need arise. We've also heard from the People's Alliance Party Deputy Leader Manua Kamakamida. He said the Fiji First government has been in power for more than a decade now, and we have all grown accustomed to the usual blame game, either on a former prime minister, previous government, now an international donor partner for issues that really fall under the ambit of government's responsibility. Kamakamida said it is not the ADB's fault that the government's procurement process awards contracts to companies that deliver half-baked jobs, Sashi.
All right, now, the Fiji First government in recent years used Standing Order 51 to ram through bills in Parliament and make them into law. The Citizens Constitutional Forum says the lack of public consultation in the lawmaking process is concerning. What do you have for us here, Nikhil?
The Fiji Village did a report on this, reported on this rather, Sashi. The Citizens Constitutional Forum, or the CCF, have said Fiji's current trend of passing bills into law with little to no public participation and consultation is worrying, and any proposed changes to a law that affects citizens should undergo public consultation and adhere to proper principles of democracy. CCF says the fast tracking of bills into law disregards the very basis of a true democracy, and it is important for government to ensure that democratic due processes are followed. The CCF says certain freedoms under the Bill of Rights in the Constitution are limited by a number of ways, and one being through written laws. The CCF says if our rights can be limited in such a way, amongst others, as stated in the Constitution, then this gives more reason for laws affecting citizens of Fiji to undergo a thorough consultative process, Sashi.
All right, and you have some news from the Fijian Elections Office as well. I believe a senior official has resigned on medical grounds.
Yes, Sashi, there was a period of pattern, if you like, when expatriates used to resign only after a short stint in their role, citing personal reasons. But we were informed last week that the Deputy Supervisor of Elections, Craig Rickards, an Australian national, stepped down from his role due to medical reasons. The Fijian Elections Office says Rickards has returned to Australia for urgent medical treatment. He was appointed to the role approximately 5 months ago, Sashi.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we can get hold of the gentleman, I'd love to interview him and find out a few more things about the Fijian Elections Office. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that one, Nikhil. Now, closer to home, here, back home, the Anthony Albanese government's climate bill has become the first climate change legislation in a decade to pass federal parliament. What do you have for us on this, Nikhil?
Yes, actually, there was reason to celebrate for the Anthony Albanese Labour government. The Guardian Australia reported that the passage of the bill was broadly welcomed by business groups and the environment movement, though climate activists urged the government to do more. It comes more than 8 years after the Tony Abbott government repealed a climate bill that included an economy-wide carbon price scheme. The 2022 legislation is comparatively modest and does not include measures to cut emissions in the private sector. Those will follow in the months ahead when the government attempts to change the safeguard mechanism, which covers emissions from big industries. Now, just to give you a sense of how the votes went, Sashi, very quickly, in the lower house, 86 vote to 50. Interesting to note that the opposition MP, Bridget Archer, a Liberal MP, crossed the floor to vote with the government, and in the Senate or the upper house, 37 votes to 30, Sashi.
All right. And a four corners expose on Australian flag carrier Qantas has raised some grave concerns about safety and security. Former and current staff have blamed it on Qantas's illegally sacking 2,000 employees. More on this, please, Nikhil.
Yes, actually, it's a very turbulent time for Qantas. Travel Weekly summarized the episode on Four Corners. And Travel Weekly said the episode, which was titled "The Inside Story of the Chaos at Qantas," took a deep dive into the stories of current and former employees of the airline, both before and during the pandemic. One of the main claims in the episode includes risks to the safety of staff. Several examples of this were given, including insufficient cleaning materials during the beginning of the pandemic, incorrect loading of baggage onto the plane, overworked engineers who struggled to get through planned maintenance, leading to higher risk of mistakes. The episode particularly highlighted the illegal outsourcing of baggage handlers and its knock-on effect on the airline. Another claim, Sashi, in the episode was in regards to tactics used by Qantas against its pilots to get them to agree to new terms and conditions by threatening to give the work to another entity. In regards to the safety of workers in the Qantas supply chain, the Transport Workers Union said it is in talks with Safe Work and has called on the Civil Aviation Safety Authority, or CASA, and the Australian Transport Safety Bureau to investigate the airline's alleged safety breaches, Sashi.
Nikhil, thank you very, very much once again for your contribution today. As always, nicely presented. Look forward to seeing you in the next program. Have a wonderful, blessed day. Take care.
Thank you, Sashi. Just one little breaking news, if you like. The Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has declared the 22nd of September a one-off public national public holiday as a day to mark or mourn the passing of Her Majesty the Queen.
Wonderful, and Australia will honor Her Majesty on that day. That's for sure. Nikhil, thank you for that breaking news as well. Have a wonderful day. Cheers now. Well, before we just move on, I want to just acknowledge some of our viewers. Vijay Maharaj is watching, Rakesh Kumar, Sandhya Narayan, Vaka Vaka Masivesi Chiochin in Bulavanaka Kemani. Hope you're well in Nandi. Agnes Anand, Lanoma Singh, Ashley Kumar, Wills McCaig, Krishna Raju, Charanjit Singh, Kanchan Charan, Billy Singh, BJ Harry Singh. Welcome once again, Billy. Chandra Segrin, Rakesh Maharaj says a fitting tribute. I appreciate that, Rakesh. Kanchan Charan, as I mentioned, has also contributed. Trevor Kwang Sung Hua watching. Thank you, Trevor. Blossom Rahman says, new look, Mr. Singh. Love the beard. Oh, well, thank you, Blossom. Bunavi, welcome to the program. Naresh Kumar, once again, a regular milestone viewer. Welcome, Rakesh and Saras Prasad as well. And Lesa Vakalala, watching from Seattle. So wonderful to have you all along. Thank you for being part and parcel of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. So now, as I said, you are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point on Facebook Live. We ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. Fijians, as I say, want to know. Please like and follow the SSTP page if you've not done so. And I have an important announcement before we meet our chief guest. Sashi Singh's Talking Point, SSTP recognizes that questioning, constructive arguments, and opinions are part of conversation. But posts with aggressive personal attacks, profanity, name calling, swearing, defamatory in nature, and or threatening will be removed immediately, and offenders will be blocked from being a part of the SSTP program. So let's all observe these rules and mind our P's and Q's, and let's all enjoy the program. Now it is time to meet our chief guest on SSTP. Our chief guest, Mr. Cecil Browne, retired as the Bank of the South Pacific General Manager Corporate in November 2019, after working there for 10 years. He has had a career spanning 47 years in the banking industry. Cecil Browne worked at the ANZ Bank Group Limited for 25 years, rising through the ranks over the years. He has also been a sporting legend in Fiji and was the captain of the Fiji cricket team. I will leave this introduction short, as I would like to find out more from the man himself. And with that, it is a very good morning from Sydney and a very good afternoon in Fiji to our chief guest, Mr. Cecil Browne. Welcome to Sashi Singh's Talking Point, Cecil. Nisam Bulavinaka.
Yeah, Bola Sashi, and thank you for accepting me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all mine. Believe you me, it's all my pleasure. Thank you for accepting the invite, Cecil. I'd like to begin where I normally do with my guests, trying to find out a bit more about them. Where were you born, and what is your family background?
All right, I'm a Taviuni boy. I was born in Taviuni. There are 9 siblings in the family, 7 brothers and 2 sisters. But I suppose I should take you back from the history behind my father and my mother's sides. The Brown family, Samuel Browne, my grandfather, their family originated from the Isle of Wight in South England. And our grandfather, Samuel Browne, came to Fiji in the early 1900s. Our father, Cecil, who I'm named after, was born and raised in Nauvoo, where the Brown family owns property along the Nauvoo River. He served with the Australian Army in World War II, and at many countries, including what they call then West Africa, Lebanon, Solomons, Indonesia, PNG, etc. After the war, he worked in Fiji as an estate manager. He worked in Moa Estate, which is in Taviuni, then Tunivasa Estate, also in Taviuni, then Wakai Island, which was then owned by his sister at the time, and then finally Kanadea Island. And he retired in the late 1960s. Now, my mother, she's a well-known lady in Fiji, Andi Loselini Rabudake Brown. She comes from a chiefly family. She is first cousins with Ratu Sepanai Nganilau, the late Tuidakau and former president of Fiji. Their fathers are brothers. She's also first cousins with Ratu Sir George Dakambau, the late Vunivalu and former Governor General of Fiji. Raju George's mother and Andi Loa's father are brothers and sister.
Okay.
So our chiefly connection covers both Mbau and Dakau and Robe. I always mention to my relatives in Mbau, call them the small island because Taviuni is the big island. As I said, there are nine Brown siblings. Quickly run through them. Penai, the eldest, was named after Ratu Penai. Migrated to Australia and he passed away in 2008. He had cancer. Joseph, or Josefa, is named after our grandfather, Josefa. He's a well-known person in Fiji. He's a career civil servant, a diplomat. He worked for Ratumara as his private secretary when Ratumara was prime minister and president. And Joe was also the manager of the Fiji rugby team on a number of tours, taking them all over the place. So he's pretty well known. Unfortunately, he also passed away in April this year. Then you have Robert, my brother, who's worked for Fiji Air Pacific, CAF for many years, and now working in the Solomons. So the Solomon Airlines, he's got a 2-year contract out there. Then Bill migrated to the States, passed away this year as well.
Okay.
And Epeli, named after Raju Epeli, of course, he passed on in 2016. So I've got Fred, who migrated to the States. He's been there for 35 odd years. And I've got two sisters, Dorothy, who is a former teacher and also worked as an admin manager for USP. And the youngest in our family is Tale, who's now married to Judge Saleh Sitemo. I'm married to Margaret. I have 2 sons and 6 grandsons. Yes, there's plenty of boys in the family, and I hope that the Brown name lives on for a long, long time to come.
Well, it sure will with that pedigree. And I find it amazing that you mentioned all your siblings without stopping to think for a moment. And that just goes to show how close-knit the Brown family are. Well done. Now, Cecil, what about your educational background?
We had a tough life growing up in Levuka. Tough in the sense that, we had 3 meals a day. We were given a uniform and sandals to last the whole year. So we just had enough to make ends meet. So it was the in thing that straight after school, once you finish your secondary entrance, was to get a job. So fortunately, I got a job straight out of school to join the banking industry. And this is when I started off my banking career with Barclays Bank International Limited.
Okay. What is your earliest memory?
Oh, okay. I was brought up in the country. And as you know, my father, he spoke, apart from English, he spoke fluent Hindi and fluent Fijian. My mother's Fijian. The house girls, the laborers, the workers, all were Fijian. So we spoke Fijian in the country. And it was time to go to school. I was close to 6 years old then. My mother took me to the Levuka Public School. And took me into the office, and they had one Kaivalangi teacher there, the principal. And then stood there, and then the teacher started talking to me in English. And I didn't understand a word he said. But when I looked around for my mother, she had closed the door and taken off and left me with this teacher. So it was quite a terrifying experience, looking at this Kavalang guy talking to me in English, and I couldn't understand a word he said.
That's a wonderful memory indeed, and one for the books. And who would you say was the earliest influence in your life?
There's a few. First, with my father. He's military man. So he taught us the meaning of hard work, honesty, integrity, respect. These are, I think, the qualities that we still have today. My mother, Andilo, there's three things she taught us: discipline, discipline, and discipline. If you stepped out of line, there's always the sasa broom or the shutter stick or the hibiscus branch, anything that you could get hold of, followed by some very colorful language. That brought us into line. But it's not easy looking after 7 boys and 2 girls on our own, because our father was out in the country. So, she made sure that we towed the line and had a good upbringing as far as those qualities are concerned. The other people, I suppose, that made a big influence in our lives were the expatriate teachers in Liverpool Public School. We looked to them for guidance and support, and they were excellent mentors for not only the Browns, but every student that went to Liverpool Public School.
Okay, wonderful. Now, let me ask you about sports. What motivated you towards sports?
Well, where we lived in Liverpool, we were right beside the park. The road separated the park from our house, our home. And there was only one park in Liverpool, the Nassau Park. And every sport was played on that ground, whether it be cricket, hockey, rugby, soccer, athletics. That one ground accommodated a lot. So whatever the season, everybody played. And so it was not unusual to have. Well, let me go back a little bit. This is where the influence of other people in our lives were concerned. Liverpool Public School was a very multiracial school, and sports, apart from the school and the life in Liverpool, sports brought us together. And we played all sports. And I'm talking about I mean all races. It was not uncommon when you field a hockey team, a soccer team, or a rugby team to have Indians. When I say Indians, Muslims, Hindus, Gujaratis, Chinese, Rotumans, Kaivalangis, Kailamas, all of them playing in the rugby team. It was a pleasant thing at the time. So it was just a normal thing. You played sports because that's at that time there was no TV, no laptops, no tablets, no mobiles. And you were lucky if you had a radio.
So wonderful. Now, how did you get into cricket?
I was very young, and I used to come down and watch the senior boys play. And there's this teacher called Terry Donnelly. They were short of fielders, so they asked me to come and field and bowl and bat. And Terry saw that I had some talent, especially with the bat. And then it all took off from there.
All right. And you then became eventually the captain of the Fiji cricket team?
Yes, I played all sports. In fact, I represented Livuka in soccer, in hockey, in cricket, and then I represented Fiji. Oh well, I was picked for Fiji in hockey.
Mhm.
And then there was this last day where everybody got to go down to Albert Park and finalize the team. But the All Blacks were playing Fiji at that particular day, so I went down to the ground instead and watched the rugby and gave an excuse. But my photo came out in the papers the next day, and I was dropped from the hockey team.
Actually dropped you from the hockey team.
Yes, because I sort of lied that I was not able to come down. But I excelled
Oh,
in cricket, Sashi. I played a lot of cricket. I've represented Fiji from 1977 to 94. I made many tours, played in five mini World Cups. In those days, the mini World Cup, there was only two teams in the two grades in the competition. We had the A grade and the B grade. We were in the B grade.
yes.
B grade at the time was teams like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Zimbabwe. These are teams that are playing in the A grade. So
Yes.
yeah, there were five mini World Cups, three to England, Birmingham, one to Den Haag in Holland, and one to Kenya in Nairobi. And I was captain for about 7 or 8 years during my career as a cricketer.
Wonderful. In fact, our good friend Adish Naidu, architect, I believe you might know Adish as well, has just posted a comment and he writes, played against him and in one of the matches, he made 208 runs, a double century. We'll never forget that day because he made us run almost the whole day. A first class cricketer and was good enough to play county cricket in England. And that's memories from Adish, Cecil. Wonderful day. You remember that day you scored that double century?
Yes, I remember that day very well, but I remember being cursed after the game by Adish and the crew um, uh, for making them run all over the ground all day long. But yes, it was a pleasant memory getting a double century in that
Okay.
innings.
Wonderful. And what would be your most memorable sporting moment?
Well, I played a lot of sports, Sashi, and I played in terms of rugby, soccer, and hockey. And I suppose there's a couple of good memories. Playing against Pakistan in Fiji when Imran Khan was playing in the team at the time. Imran Khan, the president of Pakistan, who had just been removed, playing against India with players like Sunil Gavaskar and Kapil Dev and all those greats, and
Hmm.
of course playing England here as well
Okay.
with Ian Botham and Bob Willis and but through my cricketing days, I suppose there's two highlights that I'd like to mention. Was that in 1979 we were invited into Buckingham Palace. All the teams, the A grade and the B grade teams, were invited into Buckingham Palace for a champagne party with the Queen and the late Queen, Prince Charles or King Charles III now, and Princess Anne. So that was something that I will always cherish and remember. And the other one was, Ian Botham was the greatest all-rounder in the world.
Hmm.
He's a legend, and hooking him for a six in Albert Park was probably one of my greatest memories playing cricket.
Wonderful memories indeed. Let me move on, Cecil, and let's look at your professional career. What was your first ever job and where was it?
Um, as I said, I joined the banking industry straight out of school. I saw an ad in the paper while I was still at school, and I jokingly put in an application and got a reply asking me for an interview. This is with Barclays Bank. They were just about to set up a bank in Fiji at the time. So it's a bit of a funny story, this one. And I said, "Can you come for an interview?" They didn't realize that I live in Overlau, another island. So this
Hmm.
is on a Tuesday. So I traveled to Suva on the Wednesday by boat and bus. at the interview on Thursday, and just coincidentally, and I remember the guy's name who interviewed me. His name was Brian Cecil Edmund Blake, just by coincidence. So then after the interview, he said, "So when can you start?" I'm just saying, he said, "How about Monday?" So I said, "Okay." So I hopped on the boat on Thursday, on Friday, came back to Levuka. I had to borrow $8 from my brother Joe for my first and only long pair of long trousers, brown one, and
Mm-hmm.
and then wore that long trousers for 2 weeks until
Mm-hmm.
payday when I could afford to get another one. And all my colleagues used to say, "Boy, you got plenty of long trousers, eh? Brown ones." I said, "Yeah, man." But I didn't know this is the same one I have to wash every 3 days. And I still can remember, Sashi, my
Mm.
first pay,
Yes.
fortnightly pay, net pay in 1972, December 1972, was $42.36. That was
Wow.
my net fortnightly pay. They sound very little,
$42.
but then when I got that money, I said, "Wow, what am I going to do with all this?" Because I never had a penny in my life before that. But
Yes.
it's all relevant because you can always measure it. Say, for example, a glass of a 7-ounce glass of beer at the time was 10 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Today, that same glass of beer is $2.80. So I suppose if inflation is measured in beer prices, the inflation has gone up by 2,800%.
Yes,
Those are
indeed.
good memories. Yeah.
All right. Now, you had a very long career in the banking industry, spanning 47 years. How would you describe that experience?
Ooh, man, I tell you what, there's many good experiences. It's too many to cover in this interview, but the experience was such. I when I worked for Barclays from 1972 to 83. The highlight there was, suppose, going to London and working for Barclays 3 times, working the head office in Old Broad Street and Fenchurch Street, and working for ANZ, having attachments in many countries, like 3 years in the Solomons, Melbourne, East Timor, Cook Islands, and many other countries, and of course with BSP. But the experience has been great. I mean, met many people, many businesses, many business people, made many friends, and developed a lot of relationships that I still have today.
Okay. Now, you resigned as the general manager corporate for the Bank of the South Pacific in November 2019. What was the reason for your resignation? I mean, one would have thought that would be quite a comfortable position.
Yes, after nine, it was not 10 years, after 9.5 years,
Mhm.
I'd achieved what I set out to do. And in terms of turning the bank around and growing the business to what it is today. And it was perhaps, I was past the retirement age anyway. So it was time to move on and let the younger executives move in. And with BSP, there are some good executives ready to take the role at the time. And it was a good thing to go and, leave a legacy of your time in BSP.
Wonderfully done. Talking about leaving a legacy, passing the baton on to the younger generation. What would you say was the highlight of your 47 years of banking career? Any
Uh,
one thing that stands out?
I can't. I'll have to break it
Mhm.
down to with Barclays, like I said, those three attachments in London with Barclays was one of those, and going to Lambasa to open up a branch in Lambasa for the first time. I had never been to Lambasa in my life, and I was sent there to open a branch, which means pick the premises, employ the people, train them, and build the business. So that was one of the highlights of Barclays. The NZ was taking or growing the books to $1 billion. That's a huge achievement for the unit at the time. And of course, my attachments to Melbourne and Solomons as country head or general manager of the Solomons for the 3 years, and various other places. And with BSP, I'd like to focus on this one because this is my 9.5 years with BSP. I came into BSP was formerly known as Colonial Bank. It was bought by Bank South Pacific. So it had the National Bank Fiji legacy because it was part of the good bank that the Colonial Bank had taken over. So BSP at the time was running at a loss. And we walked in and the portfolio at the time, the lending portfolio, the total lending portfolio of BSP was only 100 million. So in 9.5 years, we grew the books from that 100 million to over $1 billion. Wow. We are growing the books in BSP by net asset growth. That means, taking into account all the runoffs, the repayments, the refinancing, and all that. We are growing the books by a net asset growth of $100 million a year. That's never been done before. We did what we did in nine years, ANZ and Westpac did in over 100 years. We were growing so fast that Reserve Bank audited us a number of times. They were very concerned that when you have a asset growth that is so quick, you pick up a lot of rubbish as you go. But they were quality assets, and we achieved that benchmark in 9.5 years.
Well done. All right, we turn now to the political arena. You were announced as the provisional candidate for the People's Alliance Party, I believe in May this year. Firstly, what was the calling for you to join the People's Alliance?
I had retired, but I was available. I had the time. I was financially okay, but more importantly, I was looking at what was going on in this last 16 years, and the issues which I probably talk about later on in this show. But and I was worried because I was born here, raised here, and I intend not to leave here. My children are here, my grandchildren are here, and this is our home. This is where we will live, and this is where I'm going to pass on. And my children don't intend to go anywhere at this time. And I'm thinking of not only my children, I'm thinking of all the children and the future generations to come. It's time to put your hand up and contribute. And I believe that I have the knowledge, the experience, and the will to contribute and add value to the People's Alliance Party, and winning this election and forming the next government and taking Fiji forward. I seriously believe that that's the way to go for us.
All right. Why the People's Alliance and not any other political party? What was the draw card for you?
Well, I think I like to say it's a no-brainer, but it's not. I wanted to be part of the People's Alliance under Sitiveni Rabuka's leadership. I think he's the best person to lead the country out of the situation Fiji is currently in. He's an astute, seasoned politician and a strong but compassionate leader. And I think he's the person that can turn this country around when the People's Alliance form the next government. But if I had the choice to pick another party, I'd go for National Federation Party. That is, if they will accept me as a candidate. But that will be my second choice.
All right. As a provisional candidate for the People's Alliance Party, what do you see as the greatest challenge for you as a candidate?
Okay, like many in our team, I'm a novice in politics. I'm new. I'm a career banker, trained and driven to build relationships, provide financial services, which leads to achieving financial results, leading to asset growth, increased revenue streams, and profitability. But being a good banker does not automatically make you a good politician. I learned very quickly that a wealthy businessman has the same voting power as a wage earner. So the challenge is to convince people generally that I'm a worthy candidate to vote for in the 22 elections. I know I am.
All right.
I'm not.
Wonderful.
I'm not going to politics for financial gain.
Hmm.
I'm personally okay financially. I'm going to politics to serve the people of Fiji and to improve the quality of the lives of the ordinary Fijians. Another challenge for me is to convince the younger voters, because the majority of the voters are below the age of 40. And so convincing them because the age difference, and that'll be the challenge to convince the voting public under 40 years old.
All right. Now, what do you see as the greatest challenge for the People's Alliance as a political party?
Um, People may perceive that the People's Alliance Party is a new party. Well, it is actually. It is a new party, and we have no benchmark to depend on in terms of to monitor how we can do in this election. But we are being led by an experienced politician and a great leader. Much has been said about Mr. Rambuka, so there's no need to elaborate further. But we have a team of candidates, a great team of candidates that have a wide range of expertise and knowledge that is required to take the country forward and deliver on people's expectations. We have a team that is ready to serve the Fijian people diligently. The challenge is also to get as many voters registered before the elections, whenever that is. And we encourage all voters to vote, bearing in mind that 172,000 did not vote in 2018. 172,000. So the challenge is to get everybody to vote. The perception and the wish and the ideas, the will of the people, we hear all about, but it can only happen if you do vote.
All right. Have a break. We will come back in a moment to continue our discussion with our chief guest, Mr. Cecil Browne. And well, you are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point live on Facebook and on YouTube. Our chief guest today, as you've heard, is Mr. Cecil Browne, former banker and provisional candidate for the People's Alliance Party. Please share the page so that as many people can watch this interview with Mr. Browne. All right, we'll come back and discuss some more politics in a little while from now. With the wealth of knowledge and experience you have had in the banking industry, Cecil, I would now like to discuss some matters of interest in relation to the conduct of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, and also discuss with you how banks operate in the manner in which they do, and perhaps you can educate us a bit today as well. Now, some people have pointed out that for funds to be moved out of Fiji, there is always a difficulty in terms of limits that can be taken out with Reserve Bank approval. It has been suggested, and I stand to be corrected, that now the figure is something like $2,000 without Reserve Bank approval, and that this used to be a larger amount previously. What are your views on this? And why would there be such a low threshold of funds allowed without approval?
Yeah. Okay, Sashi. The outward flow of funds from Fiji is regulated by RBF. That's common. Fiji is not a large economy, and in the interest of a stable monetary system, that there is continuous monitoring and regulation. Whilst the need for regulation is accepted, this should not take us to a place where we are regulating for the sake of regulating. And in the process, we disincentivize investors to take out of Fiji the profits they make from the investment. The example you refer to of 2,000 per month without RBF approval probably refers to monthly payments made against debit card facilities. The limit was previously 10,000 per month.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it possibly affects former Fiji residents who now live overseas and who have assets in Fiji. Reserve Bank allows for the realization of these assets and the movement of funds overseas in a regulated manner. I think that's what they're trying to do. I think this is all started during COVID when people were trying to move money out as quickly as possible for whatever reason.
Yes. Okay. Now, you mentioned regulations, the Reserve Bank. Do you think the RBF is overregulated? And if so, do you think whether this is causing a hindrance to the overall growth of the economy in Fiji?
As I stated earlier, there is
Mm,
a need for balance in anything. There should be a bias towards less regulation in the interest of doing business in Fiji. Now, this will contribute to making Fiji an attractive investment destination. Fiji's rating for ease of doing business is well below acceptable levels. If anything, Reserve Bank should be focusing on those issues rather than trying to overregulate.
okay. Bank charges, always a subject that bankers don't want to talk about. What about bank charges across the board? Are those charges exorbitant? I mean, there are charges for everything. Even when one tries to close off their account or pay off their mortgage account, you still have to pay those bank charges for closing your account. What's your comment on those? On that?
Well, Sashi, being a banker all those years, I was on that side of the fence,
Yes.
and I tried my best to defend the bank's position in
Mm,
terms of the fee structure and what fees and charges that were applied. But let me say this: the banks regularly send out surveys to the customers to get feedback on products, services, etc. In just about every survey feedback, fees and charges is one of the main concerns for customers.
mhm.
And also, most of the complaints, written and verbal, are around excessive fees and charges. But, a competitive business environment usually allows competition to control the level of fees and charges. As you're aware, we have five main trading banks in Fiji. These banks are all very much profit driven, and I know that.
Mm,
The RBF provides oversight on the banking industry in Fiji, including fees and charges. But at the end of the day, there is a need for balance, so that whilst trading banks are entitled to profits, the profits bank make should not be excessive, and certainly not at the expense of an exorbitant cost to consumers and Fiji as a whole. But having said that, it will be difficult to reduce or take away most fees.
mm.
Banks have revenue targets that must be met. Fees and charges come under the non-interest income targets or budgets.
Mhm.
Staff salary increments and bonuses depend on these targets being achieved. Plus, once you reduce or remove a fee, it will be difficult to replace because it will require justification and approval by the Reserve Bank.
Okay. All right. Now, what are your views on the practice of banks in Fiji imposing their own panel of solicitors on customers who take out loans and mortgages?
Oh, okay. There have been a few, not many, incidences in the past wherein banks and customers have lost money due to negligence and or incompetence of law firms in not completing security documentation as required by law.
Hmm.
This is, they were set up after some of these losses incurred with some, not one particular bank, with some of the banks. The other issue here is that the amount of fees charged by your own lawyer may be cheaper than using a law firm in the panel.
Yes.
And the terms of payment can be more flexible with your own lawyer. Whereas if you're in a panel, you have to pay the fee straight up, and there's no negotiations of discounts that can be used. But the use of panels is a business practice, basically to protect the interests of both the bank and the customer. At the end of the day, a loan from a bank is a business transaction. There are two parties to this transaction: the bank, which is the lender, and the customer, which is the borrower. Now, the bank is entitled to seek its own legal advice, and the borrower should also be entitled to seek his or own legal advice. It is normal business practice that each party to the transaction pays for the legal advice that each party seeks. I hope I've answered that question.
Yeah, you have, but it still seems to me that it is top heavy in the sense that a person, a customer, is being forced to submit to the bank's panel of solicitors and not exercise their own right to their own legal counsel of choice. And if the banks control the paperwork, they can still call the shots. But anyway, I'm happy to leave it there and accept your explanation, unless you want to say something else as a former banker.
I think I've covered that particular point. Yeah.
All right, let's move on. Another feature that I find very interesting is I've taken a mortgage from a bank in Fiji for my property in Suva, and I find there's a variance when it comes to interest rates. Right now, let me tell you, for a first home buyer in Australia, interest rates on mortgage can be as low as 3.58%. The variable rate advertised by the ANZ Bank in Fiji, I checked yesterday, was 6.49%. Question: why do banks in Fiji charge a lot more interest for loans as opposed to their counterparts, say in Australia or New Zealand for that matter?
Well, it's a different economies of scale.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, the bank will insist. Sorry, you're talking about the interest rates, eh?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
What I was talking about was, why is there such a variance? For example, a first home buyer in Australia can go and apply for a home loan, and they can start off on an interest of 3.58% currently.
Okay.
Whereas
Okay.
in Fiji, I checked the rates yesterday, ANZ Bank, for example, is giving a advertised variable rate at 6.49%. So why is there such a variance when you compare to, say, Australia or New Zealand?
Okay. So banking is a business, as you know. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Banks borrow money from depositors and account holders and lend this money to borrowers. In the process, the banks charge an interest on this lending. Interest that is charged is usually a reflection of the average cost of funds to the bank that is lending the funds. If interest on loans in Fiji is higher than in Australia and New Zealand, then obviously the average cost of funds in Fiji should be higher than in Australia and New Zealand. Obviously, the margin that banks make is the profit that they make. Competitive environment generally ensure that this profit is not excessive or abnormal. Vigilance by the Reserve Bank of Fiji is necessary to ensure this does not occur. Let me add on a bit here. Most banks have an interest rate structure, which is determined by a risk grade of a particular customer. So normally, the higher the risk grade, the higher the interest rate. And this is a normal practice in most countries. So the
Okay.
level of interest rate is around the cost of funds, every cost of funds that banks make. But it is monitored by the Reserve Bank.
And talking about the Reserve Bank of Fiji, Now, who oversees the Reserve Bank of Fiji? Who's the watchdog?
Our Reserve Bank of Fiji is the banker for commercial banks and provides payment and settlement services. The role that the RBF plays in Fiji's financial system would come under the ambit of government's monetary policy. We are part of a global village, and our local economy is generally impacted by global events, something we have no control over. Fuel prices being a case in point. For our country to progress and grow, it must have a robust financial system that adapts to these global trends. Internally, our financial system has a significant role to play in making Fiji an attractive investment destination, not only for overseas investors, but also our local investors as well. The system must be such that it should be easy to do business, not hard. Whilst regulation is necessary, there should be a bias towards less regulation and not over-regulation. This, I feel, should be the overall aim of our financial system framework. Unfortunately, the current rating for ease of doing business in Fiji is well below acceptable levels. This perhaps is something RBF should also be focusing on as a matter of priority.
And why do you think that is?
It's the processes, the documentation, the policies involved in starting up a business or getting a business going in Fiji. There's just so much administration, not only for foreign investors, for local businesses as well. It's quite cumbersome to get things going.
So too much of red tape. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, it's just so hard. I've known of some investors that have come, tried, got fed up, and left. And I hear a lot of frustrations from local business people of the cumbersome policies and procedures one has to take to get something done.
All right, now, Cecil, in all your years of working in the banking industry, have you ever come across any insider trading news within the South Pacific Stock Exchange? I ask you this because I vaguely remember reading something somewhere in the past, and I thought I'd raise this with you.
Let me put it this way: there were rumors. There were rumors of some insider trading with the stock exchange, but it was some time ago. I don't think there was any evidence to support that. But other than that, I don't recall ever coming across something like this.
All right. Well, I don't expect people to rush and start selling their shares. Let's not panic. I mean, as Cecil said, there were rumors, and let's just leave it at that. Cecil, let us now look at the economy. An economy encompasses all of the activities related to production, consumption, and trade of goods and services in any entity, whether the entity is a nation or a small town. No two economies, as you know, are identical. Each is formed according to its own resources, culture, laws, history, and geography. Firstly, where do you put Fiji's economic performance at this time, September 2022?
Well, where do you want me to start? Okay, let's put it this way. Somebody asked me in New Zealand, what should the priorities be for kickstarting an economy? And I really couldn't say much at the time because, and I won't say too much today because manifesto has not been released yet. But let me just put it this way: and tourism is our main industry and has the greatest impact on our economy. To kickstart this economy, we need to immediately try and get back to where we were with the tourism industry. But we should not rely on tourism alone. There is a definite need for diversification. But agriculture was a huge potential. We should be doing more in that sector. Sugar has carried us for a long time. Someone said it's like flogging a dead horse, but we will need to assess where we are and where we are going with sugar. What structural reforms do we require to make us an efficient and effective player? Otherwise, the industry's downward trend will continue. We are certainly we are centrally located within the Pacific and often referred to as the hub of the South Pacific. That's a well-known fact. I feel we can do more to leverage our, God-given location in terms of administration, manufacturing, processing, transshipment, training, and the list goes on. But one of the huge issues that I should mention here is that we are facing is people drain. We used to call it the brain drain. But today, more qualified and low income earners are leaving the country for jobs and better opportunities. We need to create more employment to retain our human resources. And I say this because I just came back from Santa Rosa, USA, where my brother passed away. And when we had the gatherings, and there were many Fijians that came to the gatherings. And I was so surprised that the kind of people that are there, most of them are caregivers in Santa Rosa. Santa Rosa is a pretty wealthy place with a lot of retirees and rich people. And the kind of people that were doing caregiving, there were soldiers, there were policemen, there were teachers, civil servants, bankers, you name it. Unemployed people here were getting good jobs there, all because they don't have an opportunity here. And they're very happy with what they're doing in the States. And you can't stop them. For example, our minimum wage is just recently being increased to up to $4 soon. But when you compare our minimum wage here and the minimum wage in New Zealand is what, $20 in New Zealand or 25
Yeah.
or something like that. So it's very attractive for someone to go across and find a job in New Zealand as opposed to trying to find a job here. It's difficult as it is to find a job here, let alone, and then you have this minimum wage thing.
All right. Now, having said that, do you think the government should be giving incentives to businesses to invigorate the economy? And if so, what should these incentives be?
Yeah, of course, Sashi, we should be giving incentives to businesses for businesses to grow and make profit because profit is not a dirty word. You give them incentives, they grow, they make profit, and with profit comes development, comes employment, and so forth. But as I said, we are part of a global village and competing with every country out there. It is a continuous learning process for Fiji. There are countries out there that are doing better than we are. Mauritius. Let's talk about ourselves being the next Singapore, but we're far away from it. Obviously, these countries are doing something that we are not. We need to learn from these examples and see how we can adapt their strategies to suit what we may be able to offer our country.
Now, has the Fiji First government done enough to either restore or build confidence in the Fijian economy?
Well, enough is never enough, particularly when we have an ambition to grow economy. And in the process, uplift the living standards of our people. Confidence in the Fiji economy requires a holistic approach. Micromanagement does not build confidence, nor does overregulation, freedom of speech, the lack of censorship, the absence of victimization. All these are essential for confidence in the Fiji economy. You got to take all these issues away before someone can say, "Oh, I'm really happy with Fiji. I'm going to invest here and put more money into the country." But with all these issues, investors are holding off to see what's going to happen next. What laws are going to be changed? What laws are going to be introduced that may affect their business?
So, what you're saying is there's a flow on effect in terms of, for example, if you take in human rights issues, as you say, freedom of speech, there has to be a whole change happening to restore that confidence. Am I on the right track then?
Yes, definitely. And it boils down to what's happening today in Fiji, and I need not elaborate too much on that because there are many issues that is surrounding Fiji at the moment that could be improved, taken away, hopefully by the next government.
Okay, Cecil, each time that I've returned to Fiji, I am just amazed at the cash economy. Do you think there's a huge black hole in the Fijian economy with regards to the thriving cash economy? That is, where cash is prescribed form of transaction. There have been many tales in the past of big businesses shifting, well, allegedly shifting thousands and thousands of dollars overseas and not necessarily with the Reserve Bank of Fiji Authority. What's your thoughts on that, the cash economy?
Well, I know when I was with BSP, the target or the drive or the strategy was to move people away from cash, to move people away from using cash for purchases and so forth. We are we're also getting people to move away from ATMs because what happens? You go to the ATM, you take your cash out, and you can buy. We are pushing them to use internet banking, FPOS transactions, and so forth. So while there is still a cash economy, I don't think this would fall into the category of a huge black hole, as you say.
Mm-hmm.
Most transactions now go through the banking system or online, where this can be tracked and traced. This is a positive trend which should be encouraged through greater competition, so that transaction costs trends down to the bare minimum. As far as businesses taking lots of money offshore, I really can't comment on that. But it's no secret that most businesses have offshore accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they set up buying outlets which do their buying for them, of course, and um, take some money out for the running of expenses that side plus more, and send the balance across. So yes, most businesses have funds offshore. It's not something new. It's not abnormal. That's been there
Okay.
for a long. Mm.
What about the Fiji dollar? Do you think that the Fiji dollar is stable where it is, or is there a valid argument to devalue the dollar? What are your thoughts?
There's been talk of devaluation over this last number of years, and some were for, some were against. But in my view, the Fiji dollar is stable, and the
Mm-hmm.
currently stable, and there is continuous monitoring by the Reserve Bank to ensure this. Devaluing the Fiji dollar is a huge step. One must analyze the full implications of devaluation. There are pros and cons in devaluation. Devaluing the dollar would mean that the tourist dollar would be worth more in Fiji, and therefore their buying power is stronger. Tourists will get more for the dollar in Fiji, and this could be attractive to tourists. But on the downside, few things will happen. Importers will have to pay more for the products they bring in. For the same amount or same quantity of goods, they will have to pay more. It'll go down to the consumers. Cost of the imported goods for the consumers will increase. Things you buy off the shelf, which you used to pay a certain amount for, will increase with this devaluation. But the most worrying thing, Sashi, government's offshore debts, which is equivalent in Fiji dollars, will increase, which means government will have to increase repayments for the same offshore loan amount. This means the offshore debt amount will increase. This is a huge negative impact, especially with current offshore debts of approximately 3.5 billion.
Right.
Now, if you do the quick calculation there, 10% of 3.5 billion is 350 million,
Million.
or 1% is 35 million. That's just on example. So I don't think there's a valid argument for devaluation of this time. It'll affect us more than would be less good for us. So I'm not in
Okay.
favor of devaluation.
Yeah, because on one side, whilst you want to attract the tourism dollar, on the negative side, it really will hit the pockets of mums and dads in terms of what they buy off the shelf and the affordability of such items because of the devaluation of the dollar. Correct?
That's right.
All right. Okay. Now, Bill 48 was introduced into Parliament last week to bring amendments to the Financial Transactions Reporting Act 2004. The government said the bill was for the regulation and control of financial institutions and not for the people who are sending the money and receiving. What do you make of Bill 48?
All right. I think you're probably referring to the reportable cash transactions. Reporting transactions, if I remember, over 10,000 has been in place for a long time. If my memory serves me right, the report was intended to do three things. First, to detect and discourage money laundering. Second, is to detect transactions that could be linked to terrorism funding or terrorism financing. And to detect cash transactions, pure cash, that may have bypassed the taxation process, that is, tax evasion or avoidance. It was set up to determine where the funds are coming from and provide leads to any suspicious transactions. Now, reducing it to 5,000 does not make sense. I personally feel that is an instant of overregulation. It's more like trying to identify the payees in these transactions instead of determining the source of funds. That's my view on that.
Okay. Do you think that on the eve of elections, this amendment has been brought to stifle the opposition from receiving donations from overseas?
That is definitely a possible effect. Donations to opposition parties from locals and overseas people exceeding 5,000 will become a reportable transaction, and some donors may not want to fall into this category. Some donors want to support a particular party and donate money, but want to remain anonymous. So this is probably to see who the money is going to or from.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a few words a moment ago, and I'll ask you this. Infrastructure Minister Chone Usamate said that people who are against Bill 48 are pro money laundering, terrorist financing, and pro other serious criminal activities. You touched on this a moment ago. Now, in all seriousness, what are your views on this?
This is nonsense. This is nonsense. It is too simplistic and illogical to assume that people against the bill is pro money laundering. People intent on money laundering, terrorism financing, and other serious criminal activities will continue the activities regardless of whether the limit is 5,000 or 10,000. As I previously said, the amount should be considered within an overall framework. And in my view, 10,000 is a workable benchmark. There was no need to reduce that amount.
All right, let me ask you this. Do you think there's a sense of hypocrisy when, on the one hand, the infrastructure minister says that if your political supporters in other countries want to send money to your party, they're free to do it, and then on the other hand, they limit the donation to just $5,000, whereas in Fiji, certain political parties invite people into a room and get $10,000 donation from each member of the family, so to say. What's your views on that? Hypocrisy?
I can't comment on the second part of your your question in terms of getting people into a room and asking for $10,000. I can only say that I think by reducing it to 5,000, they capture more of the donors, because not many people in Fiji can afford 10,000. So a lot are giving between 5 and 10. So this lowering of the limit is to identify those donors that can't afford 10,000. They can afford between 5 and 10.
All right, have a break, Cecil. Have a drink of water. We'll come back and we'll discuss the Office of the Supervisor of Elections. You are watching Sashi Singh's Talking Point, SSTP, live on Facebook and YouTube. Our chief guest today is Mr. Cecil Browne, former banker and provisional candidate for the People's Alliance Party. Please share the page so that as many people as possible can watch the interview with Mr. Cecil Browne. Just a reminder that if you have joined SSTP for the very first time, you have the option of revisiting all the interviews from episode 1 with Graham Everett Leong to last week's interview with Aman Ravindra Singh. That was episode 34. Just visit the SSTP page and scroll down until you come to episode 1. You've got all the episodes there, or go to YouTube and type in Sashi Singh's Talking Point, and you can view all the episodes in YouTube as well. Back to you, Cecil. The Electoral Amendment Bill, Clause 3 of the bill, amends the Section 6 of the Act to provide for the powers of the Supervisor of Elections necessary to carry out his or her functions under the Act, including the power to direct a person by notice in writing to furnish any relevant information or document. Now, this has just given the Supervisor of Elections greater powers. What do you think of this amendment and to the additional powers given to the SOE?
Well, I think Fiji is probably one of the few or only country in the world that so much power is given to the supervisor of elections. I don't think there's any other country that a supervisor election has this much power. We did not have this bill in place in 2014 and 2018 elections. Why now, just weeks away from the elections? What is the logic? The supervisor of election is the guardian of the ballot, and his role is simply to ensure free and fair elections in accordance with the law. That's his job.
Right, okay. Okay, do you think the road ahead for the opposition parties is fraught with danger, given the sort of powers of investigation bestowed on the Supervisor of Elections? I mean, he can demand, for instance, any relevant information or document.
Of course, definitely.
All right.
I won't comment anymore on that, but it's an obvious answer.
And I won't push you because you might get FICAC'd. All right. All right, Cecil. You have been a career banker. Let's look at the Fiji Electoral Act 2014 for a moment. Under that act, one section, Section 116, deals with financial proof of policies. Firstly, what are your views generally on this particular provision of the Act?
Well, first of all, they are making it very difficult for the opposition, all the opposition. This means that the opposition cannot make any financial commitments when they are campaigning or discussing without backing it up with costing, funding, and repayment details. Now, how can the opposition do that accurately, given that the opposition do not even know the current state of government finances? What should be happening here is that let the opposition or any political party campaign as freely as they wish. And if they make promises, let the voters decide If they tell you lies, then obviously, you don't ever vote for them again. But it's up to the voters to decide and look at the integrity of the person or the party that is campaigning. Will they promise a lot of things and don't deliver? That's for the voters to decide.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head that that ultimate choice is at the ballot box, and that's where the voters can determine whether the promises have been fulfilled or not, and whether the party or that candidate deserves to remain in Parliament and to receive their support. Well said. I totally appreciate what you've said. Now, I don't know how you can answer this. Be cautious of the Supervisor of Elections Office and the Act and FICEC. The people of Fiji have an expectation of free and fair elections. What are your views moving forward in terms of whether Fiji will have free and fair elections? I note with concern that so far there has been no announcement at all of any overseas observer groups coming to Fiji.
Of course, Shashi. We all expect a free and fair elections, nothing less. In any democracy, a free and fair election is a given. That's an obvious thing. Let the people vote freely and choose a government of their choice.
Okay, all right. Now, one area of concern that the majority of people in Fiji express always is their worries about the debt crisis. While the general population at large call it a crisis, there are some in government who call it smart borrowing. Now, Fiji currently has about $10 billion of debts and it's rising by the day. Do you think this borrowing has been done wisely, or is this an example of irresponsible governance by the ruling party?
Let me put it this way, Shashi. There are numerous examples all over the world of thriving and failed economies. There are benchmarks for where debt level should sit for a well managed economy. For Fiji, our debt levels are considered way too high, and this points to an economy that is not well managed. As a general rule, borrowing should be undertaken only to fund capital expenditure. Borrowing should not be undertaken to fund operational costs or to fund loan repayments. Now, our current national debt was around $3 billion some years ago. Today, it's closer to 9.5 billion, the highest in Fiji's history. If we include the contingent liabilities, it could surpass the $10 billion mark. Now, contingent liabilities, for those who don't understand, are guarantees issued by government to secure a loan debt by, say, for example, Fiji Airways. So if this guaranteed debt is not repaid, then the borrower may call on the guarantee, which means government will have to meet and repay that debt. It is an additional repayment commitment to government. So if you take those two into account, it'll be around 10 or more billion. Our debt level will increase further with the additional borrowing earmarked under the 22-23 budget. If I may, I just refer to this. I just summarize the
Sure. Go ahead.
The budget 22-23 estimates. Now, very simply, I'll try and simplify it. The total deficit in this budget is 1.179 billion, broken down as follows. 872 million is the net deficit, and 307 million listed as debt repayments. This means, let me go back. So total expected revenue is 2.939 billion, 2.9 billion. Total estimated expenses, 3.8 billion. So that's where the deficit comes in of 1.179 billion. Now, this, according to this paper, will be funded by additional loans 503 million from offshore, and 676 domestically. So here we are, borrowing more money to meet loan repayments. I did mention just now that a well-managed economy or country borrows money only for capital expenditure, not to meet loan repayments. Now, this additional loan of say 1.2 billion to be drawn in the next financial year is to be added on to our national debt level, bringing total debt closer, direct liabilities, to 10 billion. This is assuming that the budget is realistic and achievable. I can recall a previous budget that was off target by 25% and had to be revised downwards by about 1 billion. Forecasted revenue then was 4 billion and it was forecasted down to 3 billion. Imagine the consequences if the bank's forecast was off, say, by 25%. Someone would be going home.
Wow.
Now, the other thing I want to mention also, a lot of people measure debt against GDP, but let me say this: debt levels are one thing. The most important thing after the loan is drawn is generating enough revenue to meet these loan repayments, and this is not happening. We are going deeper and deeper into debt. The higher the debt, the more the repayment, and most lenders to any government expect repayments as agreed in terms of the loan arrangement. And what I'm saying here, government is what we call in banking highly geared. That is, it's borrowing to the limit. This means it leaves little or no room for future development for capex projects. And what happens when, not if, there's another pandemic or national disaster or a general downturn in the economy? There's no allowance for that. I hope we will not allow FNPF members to withdraw their own funds again and call it government assistance. That was totally wrong. There's another risk with this total debt. I've touched on it a little bit. Out of 9.5 billion debt, just approximate, it's about 3.5 billion is comprised of offshore loans. Foreign
Yes.
currency loans come with what we call in banking ERMR, which is the exchange rate risk, movement risk. Exchange rates do fluctuate. And these foreign currency loans are spread over, of my understanding, 4 currencies: US dollars, euro, Japanese yen, and Chinese yuan. Simple example, US 100 million today may equate to, say, 200 million Fijian. But in 6 or 12 months' time, if rates move against the Fiji dollar, then it equate to $220 million. The Fijian equivalent increases, but the foreign currency amount stays the same. This means more debt, therefore increase in repayment commitments. And I give you an example, the 3.5 billion, if there's a 10% movement, there's 350 million.
Yes.
That's the risk that we carry all the time.
Wow. The way you've explained it is frightening, to say the least, in terms of the overall debt situation in the country. Cecil, I'd like you to just repeat that one line so that viewers can appreciate the complexity, or rather the dangerous situation. And that one line you said was that countries borrow for capital projects. If you remember that line, you mentioned that twice. May I please request you to just touch on that one line again?
Yeah. So it is a general rule for any country, any company. And, I know this from my banking rules, my banking experience, is that you borrow money only for capital projects, for development. You want to build a hydro or you want to build a road, you borrow money for that. You don't borrow money for operating expenses or loan repayments. That should be generated out of your revenue, out of your cash flow.
Wow. I mean, you've just driven the nail home, so to say. Now, what sort of priority should debt reduction be for the country, for any incoming government?
Yeah, we get asked these questions on our roadshow. Why do you want to go in there and try and sort out the mess that we could face? But I suppose someone's got to do it, and someone's going to do it for Fiji and for the people of Fiji. If we don't do it now, the situation could get worse. So top priority, of course. But like I said, we need to assess and carefully review our financial position.
Now, how does the nation clear its? Yeah,
I'll add some more. I'll add some more on that one.
sure, go on.
There is a need for balance. Debt, because you're going into a situation like this, debt reduction is important, but this should be balanced also against other demands of the economy. We need to consider and monitor and control our spending. There are essential areas like health and education, but these are things that we gotta give priority to for the people of Fiji. But we must not be wasteful. Sometimes I wonder what government overseas trips really achieve with all the allowances and the expenses that come with each overseas trip. Spending should always be monitored so that we get the greatest return on the money that we spend.
I mean, that's a common sense approach, isn't it? I mean, if you're running your household budget, if you got X number of dollars in the home, you, you'd be dead bankrupt if you mismanaged your money in the way the money for the country is being managed. That's just my thoughts. Now, my next question is, how does the nation clear its debt burden? Now, please be careful that you do not fall in breach of Section 116. I don't want you to get FICA'd for not providing any costings, etc. But generally, debt burden. How does the nation clear that?
Well, the high level way, it's what I call it is a matching exercise. We need to consider our revenue and our expenditure. We can only reduce debt if our revenue is greater than our expenditure. We need to reduce wastage, do away with unnecessary expenditure, so that money is spent in those areas that make the biggest difference to the lives of our people and their living standards.
Okay.
Now, that's going to be a challenge going forward.
All right. I'd like to now discuss the merger or the marriage between the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party. What do you make of the post-election partnership between the two parties?
Well, as you know, this is not a new partnership. It started in 1999 with Siti Veni Rambuka and the late Jairam Reddy. And as Mr. Rambuka recently announced, our partnership is crucial to the election victory that we seek. We need each other. And he mentioned in his speech that he said, we will set an example to the nation of political cooperation that crosses boundaries and creates a strong platform for rebuilding Fiji. And some of the things that we discussed at the outset is to have a party that is inclusive, multiracial, with the common aim of taking Fiji forward. Partnership with NFP is a good thing, and they're a perfect partner for the future of Fiji. I knew you were going to ask me this question, Sashi. So I've been reading Jairam Reddy's speech that he delivered to the GCC in 1997. I've read it before, read it again. Sitveni Rambuka read it out again at Jairam Reddy's funeral in New Zealand. And there's a few paragraphs there that always touches me whenever I read it. And I'd like to quote, and if I may, Sashi, just quote a few lines out of that.
Please do, because I also published his entire speech on the SSTP page after his passing as a tribute to him. But please go ahead and quote those passages that you want to.
Yeah. So this is in 1997. Jairam Reddy speaking, the first Indo-Fijian to speak at the Great Council of Chiefs meeting, invited by Sitiveni Rambuka, who was Prime Minister at that time. It's quite a lengthy speech, but I'll just read a few paragraphs.
Sure.
And he says here, the Indians of Fiji, brought to these shores as laborers, did not come to conquer or colonize. We, the descendants, do not seek to usurp your ancient rights or responsibilities. We never have. We have no wish, no desire to separate ourselves from you. Fiji is our home. We have no other, and we want no other. And he goes on to say, we seek not domination. Indeed, we cannot dominate. We are not the majority ethnic in this multicultural nation. What we seek is partnership. And this is partnership that we are talking about today. And he says, we seek a country whose children of all races grow up with a deep understanding and respect for each other, respect each other's cultures, languages, and traditions. We seek a country that encourages the best and the brightest, indeed encourages all its people of all races to work together. We seek not to threaten your security, but to protect it. For in your security lies the basis of our own. Those are very touching paragraphs by Jairam Reddy at the time, and it still applies today. And it's very, makes me quite emotional whenever I read that.
Yes, indeed, at the time that it was spoken, and even today, it resonates where and how Fiji should exist in harmony with all races together. Now, I must ask you this. We've talked about the partnership of the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party, two distinct leaderships, leadership of Mr. Sitiveni Rambuka and the Honorable Professor Biman Prasad. How do you perceive the leadership of the two respective gentlemen?
I've known Sitiveni Rambuka for a long time. He was at KBS when I was at LPS, although he was a number of years older than I am. So I've known him for a long time. But I see in him a great leader, a seasoned politician, a good communicator, humble and compassionate person. And I must say I'm honored and privileged to be part of his leadership and this great team of People Alliance party candidates that have pledged their support to our leader, Sitiveni Rambuka. Professor Biman Prasad, although I don't know him too well, I read a lot and hear a lot about Mr. Prasad. He is a smart, astute operator, and he's always talking to the point with facts to support, which we all admire. He's definitely a good person to have on our side, and he will be of great value, not only to the party, but to all Fijians and to Fiji for the future of Fiji going forward.
All right. Let me ask you whether you believe there is a culture of fear that exists in all opposition parties, including the People's Alliance and the National Federation Party, the fear of this ever pending threat that they will be subject to investigations by FICAC.
Of course, Sashi. Of course. And the threat has intensified, especially with more recent changes to some electoral laws. It's just making it very difficult. And I believe they're monitoring, they're watching, and the threat is always there.
So it's like walking on eggshells. It's an absolute dangerous environment to be in. Damned if you do, damned if you don't, sort of thing.
Yeah, walking on thin ice.
All right. Now, do you think that each party, and I believe there's something like 9 or 10 political parties so far in this election. Do you think that each party fielding 55 candidates is going to absolutely divide the voters and give an advantage to the ruling Fiji First Party?
Yes, definitely. It definitely could. The concern, I think, is not only the number of candidates for each party, but also the number of parties registered to compete in the election. I think there were 9. I think there are 10 parties competing in this next election,
Yes.
and I don't know what the rationale or the logic is for these newer parties to come in. I suppose they have political ambitions, which is their democratic right to form a party. But some of the parties will obviously not meet the threshold of 5%. So we
Yes.
have 684,000 registered voters now, and if we say just for round numbers, 600,000 vote. So the 5% threshold is 30,000 votes. So for those parties that don't get 30,000, those votes are wasted. And you look at the smaller parties in 2018 elections, how many votes did they get? And if you double their votes, triple or multiplied by 4 times, it still won't meet the threshold. So yes, definitely it will dilute the votes. It could work to the advantage of Fiji First. So the message here to those parties, the people that's gonna vote for those parties, vote wisely. And to those parties, it's never too late to have a discussion with the other opposition parties to work out a strategy that is good for all.
That door is still open then.
I would think so. I think Sitiwani Rambuka is an open person. He's very receptive, and he would. I'm pretty sure he would discuss it with the opposition. We've tried many times to link up with a couple of parties.
Okay, now, what do you think are the key issues for the general election 22?
You will recall 2018. It was a very wet day, bad weather.
Yes.
And 172,000 roughly registered voters did not vote. And if they had voted at that time 10% or 50% or whatever percent, there could have been a change of government in 2018. Because I understand that the majority of those voters were Itoke voters, and they would have voted for maybe Sodalpa. The other issue is around winning the confidence of all voters, especially some sectors of the Indo-Fijian population. I'm talking about our party. The message here, I suppose, is that we are an inclusive, multiracial party. Our partnership with NFP is a genuine indicator of that fact.
Okay. Now, the People's Alliance celebrated its first birthday this week, the first anniversary of registration on the 8th of September. How did the party mark this milestone?
We had the anniversary party at the headquarters, attended by all the candidates, all the vice presidents, the founder members, our president Tunandi, and there were speeches by Sitiwani Rambuka and a couple of Indo-Fijian candidates that were there. The prayers was said by Mr. Singh, who was one of the candidates. And this is the first anniversary of the party. And we talked about how the party was formed and how in a very short time the party was was able to get 10,000 signatures in such a short period of time. And there was a mood of confidence, the mood of hope, and the mood to change what many people feel should be changed. But yes, Sashi, the party is strong, well, and alive, very much.
And did you have a slice of that cake?
Definitely. I actually had two pieces before I
All
had
right.
chow.
All right. On that occasion, the first anniversary, what was the all-important message delivered by your party leader, Mr. Sitiveni Rambuka?
Apart from the fact that that we're a strong party standing for change. We're a movement that's going to bring about change. The, he also the message was to be good citizens, integrity, honesty, um, so that we can all lead by example, and the people of Fiji can see that the People's Alliance Party leader and the candidates, the people stand for all these good attributes that we are talking about. And the message is go out and discuss issues about voting and make sure everybody register to vote and go out and vote wisely.
All right. Now, is there any truth in the rumors at all that there's an internal rift within your party?
No, I haven't heard any rumors about
Okay.
our party, and if there is, or if there was, I'm pretty sure Sitiveni Rambuka would have resolved that in no time. But in a democratic party, a truly democratic party, there will always be differences. There will always be debates about certain things.
Hmm.
But a true democratic party will be able to discuss it and resolve it within, and then move forward, knowing full well that whatever the party decides there is the way forward. And whoever is in that meeting and had that riff should walk out of the meeting and say, yes, we've done it, we've resolved it, let's move forward. That's what true democracy is all about. It's not about dictating to the members or the candidates or the members of the other party, this is what we must do. No, this is how we operate as a party.
So it's a consensus sort of style and approach.
Yeah, that's the way Sitiveni Rambuka operates. I mean, he listens, he listens to all the facts, he evaluates the situation, and comes up with solutions that will satisfy all those that have that so-called riff. I haven't heard, but if that's the way he would operate.
All right. I'm happy to leave it there. Cecil, as we head for the home stretch, let me ask you for your assessment of the incumbent government. What do you think of the performance of the Fiji First government for the last 16 years?
Well, you have to look at what 16 years ago or 15 years ago, what the situation was and what it is today. And I'll go through a few lists. One thing that struck me was the pathetic condition of our hospitals. And I'll give you an example. Two of my brothers passed away this year, one in February, one in April. My brother Joe was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He had only a few weeks to live, a few months to live. So we were trying to make him as comfortable as possible. We worked on his bucket list or his wish list before he passed on. But while we were doing that, we were taking him in and out of hospital, CWM.
Mhm.
While we were doing that, my other brother suffered a massive stroke in Santa Rosa. So I'd fly across. He was unconscious. He had this thing called live-in syndrome, whereby he could not move any part of his body except his eyelids. He only can communicate with his eyelids. So he was in hospital, and went to that hospital many times. until he passed away 9 days later, and did that. Then I came back to Fiji, and then went back to CWM Hospital, and saw that hospital. And I was, when you live with a condition, you sort of don't. I know it's bad, but when you go and see what facilities are available offshore, in just one hospital in one town, one little city, in the state of that hospital compared to our CWM hospital, it was very hard to understand. And this is our main hospital in Fiji. We also got to look at the levels of poverty. They say there's no poverty. No, come on. It's between 30 and 40%. The unemployment rate is around 30%. And because of these two issues, there are social implications. There's crime, there's prostitution, drugs, and of course, the water cuts, the power cuts. Water is a basic human right, and we still can't get it right here in Suva, as if we don't have any rain. The high debt levels are talked about. Our roads, especially in suburban and rural areas, we seem to be digging up roads where it's still usable, and we're digging up roads where it's most visible, and it just happened to be just before elections. Cost of fuel and basic food items. The minimum wage levels took 16 years to address it, or try and address it. And of course, I said, freedom of speech and movement, lack of affordable housing, and the list goes on. These issues and more have been raised many times in different forums, Hashi, and they should have been addressed or attended to in the last 16 years. The other thing that also concerns me is, holding back of funds payable to USP that's already been approved and should have been paid. Why let the students and teachers suffer because of the issues surrounding the USP admin? Investigations were undertaken and did not uncover any anomalies. Government should pay these fees, and let's move on.
Okay. Well, first of all, my condolences to you and the family for the loss of your two brothers. Tragic that two brothers have passed on in a short space of time. So my condolences to you and the family, Cecil. Our thoughts and prayers go with you all. That's one thing. You mentioned CWM Hospital, and I'm talking about the performance of the Fiji First Party, the Fiji First government. Another aspect of the health services, they've been promising that heart operations will start in Lautoka very, very soon. And that's been put back time and time and time again. Is there a real expectation of these things, or is it just up in the air as a good speech, as a good policy announcement?
Yeah, well, Sashi, let me just make one thing clear, that when I'm attacking the CWM hospitals, and I am in no way criticizing the nurses and the doctors.
Well said.
Yeah.
I certainly salute you for that.
They're doing their best, and I take my hat off to whichever hospital that I go to, and I see them working very hard with limited staff, limited resources, limited facilities, and I have no issues with the doctors and the nurses in those hospitals. My issues is with conditions and the resources in those hospitals. Now, with that heart surgery, every week I read something that says we're gonna do this on this particular date, and then it is extended, and then it is extended, and it's extended. And as far as I am aware, it has not started. That's my understanding of that.
Well, we'll just keep an eye on that to see when it will start. Now, do you think the Fiji First government could have done things differently that would have been for the betterment of the nation? Different style?
Oh, I've listed all the issues that, but I suppose you're talking about in their way they're managing the country. As everybody knows, it's a two-man government, and They control and make all the decisions, maybe on their own. Whether the other ministers in the cabinet actually contribute or not, we are not sure. But they don't listen. They have, and I said in my first speech that I want a government that listens and takes advice from not only from within your cabinet, but from parliament, from the opposition, from the public. And accepting constructive criticism is one thing. It's actually a good thing because it tells you whether you're doing things wrong or you can do better, or you just the criticism could be very valuable, and that's something that they should take into account. Um, so they haven't reached out to the people for assistance in any way, despite many offers that have been offered to them.
Okay. Now, as I said, you've been a sporting legend in Fiji, the captain of the Fiji cricket team. Now, if you were the captain and coach of Fiji's parliament, Cecil, where would you place the Fiji First government? Would they make your first 11 team?
That's obvious, Sashi. They will not be in my team.
Will they
I
make it to
think
the reserve bench?
they could. Some of them may, not all.
Mhm.
But we have enough players in the People's Airlines and the National Federation Party to form the A and B team.
Okay. Now, overall performance-wise, has the Fiji First government been a success or failure in your eyes?
I think I've just answered that in the list of issues that I discussed. Any successful party or government would not attract all these many negative comments about the country in terms of the facilities that we have. And I'm not the only one that's saying this. Everybody on the streets that are talking about these issues. So that in itself speaks for the performance of the current government.
If everyone on the street speaks about concerns, issues, etc., is there anybody in government listening, or has arrogance just taken over that they've got blinkers on, they've got earbuds in?
Uh,
What do you say to that?
I think they may be listening. They may not be listening. If they're listening, they're probably not acting in a manner that will address the issues concerned. If they are doing it, it's not showing in what we have today.
Okay. Now, Cecil, at the time of the announcement of your candidature for the People's Alliance Party, you said that you wanted to be a party candidate who listens to advice, listens to suggestions, listens to what people have to say. Why is this important to you?
Well, Sashi, that's how a true democracy works. How true democracy works effectively. Um, Government should always be receptive to advice and constructive criticism, as I said earlier. We are all not perfect, and everyone make mistakes, and you learn from those mistakes. And government should always allow input from the public, from the opposition, from whoever. Doesn't mean you have to act on it, but at least you get another opinion, and you get a cross check on what you're actually doing. And
Oh,
our party will definitely be a listener and be a party that accepts constructive criticism. We probably won't welcome the ridiculous criticism. Constructive criticism is what we want. And when people have a constructive criticism, of course we'll be looking to them for a suggested solution as well. It's no point just saying, "Oh, this is no good," and you should tell us why. How can we fix
sure.
that?
All right. Now, from the time of the announcement of your candidature in May 2022 to today, What have you learned about people's expectations? What are they? You mentioned a little while ago that people are speaking. What are the people saying?
Well, the general feedback, as I said before, definitely a time for change in leadership, a change in government. 16 years is a long time, and even if they did well for one term or two terms, 16 years is a long time. You look at most countries, two terms and you're out. There's always time to bring in fresh blood, because I think they've run out of ideas. They've increased our national debt level, choking our financial position into such a state that we won't have any surplus for further development in the future. It's time for a change, and the People's Alliance Party and the National Federation coalition stands ready to take Fiji forward after the next election.
Now, in the SSTP poster trailer, your speech bubble said, and I quote, "It's definitely time for change in leadership. Fiji deserves better." End of quote. Now, this was quite profound, I thought, because you went for the leadership. Why did you call for the change in leadership? And which, if any, leaders were you particularly referring to? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you.
When a ship goes aground, the captain gets the blame.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the rule. The captain is the one that makes the call for direction and steers the course for that particular ship. And in this case, I think you know who the leaders are. They are the ones that are calling the shots, and that's what I meant. That perhaps the captain of the ship needs to be replaced.
Okay, made your point. Now, Cecil, what is the People's Alliance Party's message to the public?
All right. Our message has always been you must all register to vote. And I know when I say this, the married women that have to change their name, the inconvenience and the frustration of going to get their voter cards changed. All I can say to these ladies is that this is a once only, because after the election that will most likely or will be removed. The other message is it's only one day in 4 years this voting comes along. There's only one day. And in that one day is a couple of hours that you need to. And before you go out to vote, you make sure that you have your voter card, your polling station. You should have a blue voter card with your polling station on the registration card. Please go to the polls and vote and have your say in choosing the next government. Like I said, and I'll say it again, the opposition lost the election by 0.02% or 147 votes, if I remember correctly. But 172,000 did not vote. And imagine the results if 10, 20% of those voters had voted. And you must vote for a person that's in a party that will make it to parliament. The threshold of 5% is approximately 30,000, as I said earlier. Votes should go to the party votes that goes to a party that does not make the 5% is wasted. Your vote is dead. You have not made any decision, or you have not contributed to a change of government if that's what you want.
All right.
So
And
please vote wisely.
okay, so that was the message of the People's Alliance Party. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to give our viewers your message. What is your message to the public?
We keep hearing, please change this. Please change that. Change so many things. We can't change anything, but you all can. You can make that change on polling day. That one day in 4 years, the power is in your hands, in your vote to choose the next government. So don't waste it. Please take the time out and make sure that you go and vote. You know, Fiji has always been referred to as the way the world should be. It was one time. And to make these changes, we need to make sure that you vote wisely so that we can bring that saying back to Fiji the way the world should be. And that's the message.
All right.
And the People's Alliance Party, let me just say one more thing.
Yes.
And in partnership with the National Federation Party, stands ready to be the next government. We certainly have the experience, the knowledge, and the will to make Fiji great again.
All right. And finally, Cecil, only if you want to, do you have any remarks or comments on the SSTP interview that you've just participated in?
Well, I've been watching most of your shows, Sashi, obviously because it's interesting, and it's a good show. It really, the time allocation is good. You can discuss a lot of things, and a lot of people don't know many things that's happening in Fiji until they watch your show. And the subject that you bring up very interesting, and it applies to the people of Fiji. It would be nice to maybe invite some people from the People First Party. If you so wish, it'd be good to get their opinion on that. But I think you got only a few weeks left, so you got to program your next shows up to the election so that you make sure you get the maximum for the people of Fiji. But it's a good show, Sasi.
Well, I appreciate your sentiments. Thank you, Cecil. Let me assure you and our viewers that I have invited the Attorney General, I have invited the Prime Minister of Fiji, I've invited a couple of ministers, and that invitation has been long standing invitation, and I don't expect them to appear on the show, full stop, for whatever reasons they have. However, as they say in show business, the show must go on, and we shall continue. Cecil Browne, a big Vinaka Vakalevu to you. Dhanyavad, thank you so much for being my chief guest today. I found it very interesting, and I could sit and talk about your sporting days for hours and hours over a few beers. And hopefully one day we'll catch up and share a Fiji bitter or two, I guess. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you as chief guest today. I thank you for discussing the matters of national importance, and I hope that our viewers found today's program interesting as well. Now, I wish you all the very best in your candidature for the People's Alliance Party. And through you, Cecil, I'd like to send a message to your party leader, Mr. Sitiveni Rambuka, and that is, he's welcome on SSTP at any time, and better still, he should perhaps take up my invitation to make a joint appearance on this program with the leader of the National Federation Party, the Honorable Professor Biman Prasad. What do you say to that suggestion?
I think it's a great opportunity to bring them on your show. I think the people will love that. You get a great audience for that particular show.
Well, I hope it eventuates.
I hope
Sorry,
so
go
too.
on.
I said I hope so too. I'm sure Sitiveni Rambuka and Biman are very flexible people, and time permitting, they could come on your show.
All right, and as you mentioned, there's a limited time before the elections. Let me tell you, I'm ready. My Sundays are going to be absolutely full. Some of my guests are already lined up in the lead up to the election announcement, in the lead up to polling day. So I'm ready, and as they say, bring it on, and let's rock and roll.
Yeah.
Cecil, once again, thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Stay safe, stay well, and stay blessed. Cheers to you.
Thank you, Sashi.
Thank you now.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless you. Bye bye now. Well, there you have it. That's our program for today. I thank all the viewers who've taken time to provide their positive feedback. SSTP, we ask the questions that Fijians all over the world want answers to. Fijians want to know. Well, as I said, that's it for episode 35 of, rather, that's all for episode 35 this week. I'm losing count of all the episodes. A big thank you to my regular contributor, Nikhil Singh, for his input in the program today. To my SSTP team, a very big thank you as well. And to you, our valued viewers, a big Vinaka Vakalevu to you. Now, let me reveal the name of our chief guest for the next episode. My chief guest My chief guest next Sunday is larger than life personality who has been a former leader of the opposition in Fiji. He's a politician, entrepreneur, facilitator, and is a member of Savinatha Narumbe's Unity Fiji Party. My chief guest for next Sunday will be My chief guest for next week will be Mr. Mick Beddoes. I am really looking forward to a robust and enthralling interview with Mick. I hope you can join us for episode 36 next Sunday because the Mick Beddoes that I know will not be pulling any punches. So don't miss episode 36 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. So until the next episode, I'll leave you with this quote from Abraham Lincoln, who said, "Those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, and under the rule of a just God cannot long retain it." I repeat, those who deny freedom to others deserve it not for themselves, and under the rule of a just God cannot long retain it. That quote from Abraham Lincoln. Well, that's it for episode 35 of Sashi Singh's Talking Point. Till the next program, I am Sashi Singh, bidding you goodbye, namaste, and ni samore. Goodbye, world.